Sugar has become the new saturated fat. And no one should have any sugar. We shouldn't eat sugar. So I want to ask you, Sharon, what is the deal with sugar? What's the truth about sugar? Is it as bad as it's made out to be? Or, what is your opinion on sugar?
Hey everyone, it's Sharon Brown, founder of Bonafide Provisions and clinical nutritionist.
And I'm Grace. I'm marketing manager at Bonafide Provisions, and I am a nutritional therapist. And today we are talking about sugar. So I think everyone has heard, and it's all over the news, that sugar is bad.
Yeah, the idea behind sugar being bad for you is nothing new, right? So there's actually a book that was really transformative in 3 very important people in my life, and it's called Sugar Blues. So I don't know if any of you have read it.
By William Duffy?
Yes.
Right? Okay.
Sugar Blues. My husband read that book when he was, I think, teenage years. Didn't eat sugar for like 10 years after reading it. Bill Weiland, who is a dear friend, a supporter of Bonafide, and also one of the largest brokers in the United States and a partner of ours, read Sugar Blues. It transformed his life. And then a nutritionist friend that I have, that's what started her entire nutrition career 20 years ago, was her reading the book Sugar Blues. And so, what is this deal with sugar? And, the tough thing about sugar is that, as I've said in previous kind of tapings, that most people that are sugar addicts will come into my office and think that the sugar is not the problem, and it is. And it is challenging to gain perfect health and continue to consume large amounts of sugar.
Well, can we clarify, and this has always been confusing for me, when people say sugar, what are you talking about? Because people will say, oh, I gave up sugar. So does that mean the white sugar in the bag that's in Skittles and candy, processed sugar? Or because there is naturally occurring sugar, there's sugar in fruit, there's sugar in milk, there's sugar in potatoes, there's sugar in rice. Those will all essentially, when you eat them, carbohydrates are all broken down into some form of sugar. So what are we talking about when we talk about sugar?
Yeah. Well, it doesn't mean that you can't eat a potato for sure.
Or Skittles, occasionally.
So there, definitely different forms of sugar. So we're talking about white table sugar, which isn't, if you think about it, it comes from nature. White table sugar, it comes from cane sugar. Stevia comes from the stevia leaf. Fruit sugar comes from fruit. Just like you said, other sugars come from food we eat. But I'll give you a really good example of sugar in food that isn't something that you necessarily need to worry about. There's sugar in dairy. Most of us don't realize that, but there's a natural occurring sugar in dairy. That's not the kind of sugar that we're talking about. So, but let's talk about naturally occurring sugar in dairy, because what helps you utilize that sugar to its most potential is the fat in the dairy. And the fat in the dairy will actually slow the rate at which your body consumes the sugar and utilizes the sugar, so you don't have that crazy high and low. But we Americans have demonized fat, and we took fat out of our dairy, and we became these like low fat people. And what happened was we took the sugar that was in the dairy, and it's spiking our insulin levels and really kind of making us fatter.
Okay.
Really kind of quite fascinating. So there's naturally occurring sugar in your foods. That's not what we're talking about. Okay. Fruit sugar can be problematic if you're having 10 servings of fruit a day. That's not going to be the healthiest thing, because remember, we've said in the past, too much of a good thing is not a good thing. Even water can kill you. So let's just talk about sugar and what your body does when you consume sugar. I think so many people will say to you, stop eating sugar, and you don't know why. Mm-hmm. So let's just talk about it. Yes. Let's just break down what your body does. It's interesting because most people know more about their car, their scooter, their Instagram follower, the people they follow, than they do how your body works. And this is important that you know how your body works. So when you consume sugar, you put the sugar on your tongue and your body reacts by taking that sugar and turning it into glucose so it can use it as energy. And then what happens is your pancreas will kick out insulin so that you can get the sugar, that glucose, into your cells so you can use it as energy. The problem is that most people consume too much sugar and they don't expend all of the energy to be able to utilize that sugar. And so guess where that sugar goes? When you consume the sugar, turns it into glucose, and you don't use it as a form of energy like running around the block. You just continue to just like load your mouth of sugar and you sit at your desk and type, and load your mouth of sugar and you sit at your desk and type, and you're not using that energy. What happens is your body will take that glucose, put it into your cells, because your body's just trying to stay alive, right? It's gonna try to utilize it later, and it's gonna store it in your fat cells. And that's why people who typically drink diet sodas will gain about 5 pounds over a year's time, because all of that fake sugar that they're taking in, their body responded by kicking out the insulin. Your body created the glucose wasn't used as energy, and now you're storing it in your fat cells and you're just continuing to get fat.
And I've also heard that with the fake sugar substitutes, the other part of that is that because it's such a sweet, it's 10 times sweeter than actual sugar.
Stevia is 450 times sweeter than sugar. So just sit with that for a minute. Stevia is 450 times sweeter than sugar.
And so your body, because your body's still getting the taste, like we've talked about before, anything you put in your mouth sends a message to your brain. So your brain thinks, I'm getting sugar, but there's no calories. So it keeps asking, and that you'll overeat. Like that's why the fake sugars will make you overeat.
Kind of. I mean, what happens is that your body says, oh my gosh, I taste sugar. And by the way, a lot of sugar, like 450 times more than I've tasted before. And so what does your body do? I mean, this is a smart machine right here. It kicks out even more insulin to be able to process all of that glucose it's thinking that it's taking on. And so you think you're tricking your body into taking in glucose. You're thinking, well, your body is reacting the same way. Your body is still going to send out that insulin. You're not going to have kind of, I mean, it says like there aren't any calories, right? I mean, I don't know who's counting calories anymore, but there are people who count calories. There aren't any calories in stevia. And so what happens is your body is now reacted to something very, very, very sweet, thinking that it's having this rush and boatload of sugar, natural sugar coming, and it's not. And so it's
confusing.
It's very confusing for the body. And I'm not saying to never use stevia. That's not what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is that you have to use everything
again if you're eating it around the clock.
In moderation. If you're doing this every single day and every single morning, you're adding stevia to your coffee and you're adding stevia to, or any other sweetener, whatever you want, whatever sweetener is your choice, to your lunch and your dinner, now you're seeing that your pancreas and this insulin system is just on overload. It was never created, this body was never created to take in that amount of sugar.
So back to when eating real sugar, is this why I liked when you said, if it's not necessarily that sugar is a bad thing, because our bodies know how to handle it. There's certain mechanisms to process it. Like we know how to do these things for a reason, but it's all kind of dependent on your lifestyle. That's what, like my cousin is a professional triathlete, and he eats he fuels himself on glucose. A lot of endurance athletes will fuel themselves on glucose, and it's perfectly fine because they're burning through that. Like they're using
energy. Exactly.
So is it just kind of, it's not that you need to cut sugar out of your life, but like we said before, what is your lifestyle, and is it appropriate, like the amount? Is that how you would go about it, or what?
I mean, there are going to be things that you have to draw the line in the sand with. So that means that maybe you're not going to be my friend. And so, but I would hope that you want me to always speak truth and not what you want to hear. And so, and that's just who I am, and that's what I'm always going to do. I don't sugarcoat things.
Ah.
Get it? And so there are times that you will have to, for some people, completely eliminate sugar. And
Do you mean like fruit
not,
sugar,
not
dairy
the
sugar?
food, not the food sugar, but sweeteners, processed sugars, regular sugar, and even some fruit sugar. If you are somebody who's saying, I obviously have a sugar addict, and you know who you are, stop hiding behind your, your whatever you're hiding behind. Stop hiding behind it, because you know who you are. You're the person who's arguing with me all the time about, can't I just have a little bit? You know who you are. And so it's probably creating issues in your life that would be gone if you just stopped. You need to stop for 6 weeks typically to really kick a sugar habit, and then add it back in. And what that means is any processed sugar, any type of alternative sweeteners like a stevia or a monk fruit, and fruit sugar. But the natural occurring sugars like in dairy or a potato do not have to be eliminated. And again, this isn't a one-size-fits-all. This isn't advice for everybody out there, but what we're talking about is some people cannot move that needle to health because they'll say, well, I'm just having a tiny little bit of stevia every day. I promise you from experience, in my clinical experience, you cannot kick your sugar habit if you feed the sugar habit. It doesn't go away.
Yeah. So we're not talking about carbohydrates. We're talking about
sugar.
Just sugar, and it's 6 weeks.
It's simple. It's not that technical.
Yeah, and 6 weeks because, just try something, and then you can always then you'll see.
Yeah, 6 weeks isn't a pie in the sky number that I came up with. I worked with thousands of people across the country, helping them support their body through food. And when I did that, I found after working, patient after patient, case after case, that 6 weeks was typically that mark of really being able to change the body and change how your body reacts to food and anything that you're processing in it.
And did these people at the end of the 6 weeks, do you reintroduce it, or do they, do most people just feel like they're good without it, never want it again, or what's kind of after the 6 weeks, then what?
Yeah, a few things happen, but let's just talk generally.
Yeah.
So, when I'm speaking, I'm talking generally, and yes, there's going to be different scenarios that this may not apply to. But after about 6 weeks, once we would kind of meet and say, how are you feeling? Great. These are the 12 kind of things that I've checked off that I'm no longer experiencing, right? Then add it back in. Why don't you try it and see how your body reacts? Most of the time, and I think that all of you who are out there that have done this before will say, oh my gosh, I ate a raspberry for the first time. It was the sweetest thing I've ever tasted. I can't believe how sweet a raspberry is. And either I felt like it's gonna take me right back to where I was, kind of into this addiction, or I feel like I don't even need that any longer. Or, I'm gonna incorporate this back in, but I'm going to rotate it in. I'm going to do kind of this common sense approach. Yeah. And really, one of the things that I always say, and you've heard me say this, Grace, many times, like on vacation, when I'm on vacation and we're Instagramming something, food should affect you. And if food doesn't affect you, there's a problem. There's a problem. So
that's interesting.
Yeah, you should be able to feel what your body feels like. And so you'll be able to kind of see if you're somebody that can tolerate sugar fruits and, fake fruits and, fake sugars, and see how your body utilizes them because of the way it makes you feel. And typically, and this is most case scenario in general, most people will say, I feel so great that I don't need to put that spoonful of sugar in my coffee any longer.
Yeah.
I feel amazing and I'm not gonna go back there. That's that was the overwhelming response to kind of kicking it out.
Super interesting. So
Yep.
that's what we have for today. Friends, if you liked this video, tap the little heart. If you have any questions, please leave them for us in the comments and let us know if there's any other topics you'd like us to talk about in these videos. And always remember to follow Bonafide Provisions on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. Thank you.
Bye.